The future is here. An innovation that will change the way the industry works. A Hot 100 chart, updated daily. The most accurate price guide on the market. Every card has its own profile with a wealth of information. Know the precise, real-time value of any card in the system. On demand. You now have the power to unlock the secrets of the hobby. The game changer is here. Card Ladder.
Happy Friday, everyone. Another great night for some crossover. I got some cool mail day too, or mail days from the week. Some cool stuff. What's up? East Coast staying up late? I'm gonna do some mail days while we wait for Chris. What's up, man? Blinding 90s, what's going on? I posted this the other day, but man, these are cool cards. Promo auto. Chris is here. These ones are really tough in the auto, but this one is like perfect. Auto's just perfect. What's up, man?
What's up, Ben?
Doing my mail days for the week.
Nice.
Love this promo autos. There's one. Michael Thomas. Silver. I got a 9. I got some PSA cards back this week. A lot of 9s. Lot of 9s. Got an RPA back. This is my 4th RPA now. Another 9. This one's kind of cool. Finally dipped my toe in the Kaboom game. This is the first Kaboom card I've ever owned, and this is the first LeBron. This is the first year they ever made Kaboom. All the way to 2013. This would have been Giannis's rookie year. So a lot of people talk about having the original or something. This is the original Kaboom. 2016. Of all the silver prisms, this one is always the cheapest, so I just keep buying these. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, maybe like the design or something. I like these ones. So I'll just keep buying them, I guess. And then finally got my Federer. I posted a while back about getting one of these, and they're pretty tough to find, actually. There's only 100 of them. Finally found someone willing to sell. This is a quad 9.5, which is kind of nice. So this is like Federer's true rookie card, I guess you would say. So got the Federer rookie I was looking for finally, so set on tennis for a while.
Dude, that was a hell of a mail day right there. Mail week.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that is such a beautiful card. Very nostalgic card as well.
All right, what do we got?
We have a lot. We were talking earlier today. I said, man, we didn't get that many questions this week. I was wrong. They came pouring in. They're still pouring in. Got a lot of questions on this type of topic. I think this is a good one to start with. It's very timely. Hawks and Habs PC writes in and he says, what are your thoughts on protecting yourself as a seller when selling outside of eBay, such as Instagram or Facebook? Should you always do friends and family? So selling is we have several questions on selling, and that's the first one. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, taking friends and family is the easiest one. I mean, once the money comes through friends and family, there's nothing the seller can do to get it, or the buyer can do to get it back. The other one is, I guess, just getting like referrals or having the buyer maybe like have some connection to you of someone that you both know, that they can vouch for them or something. So I guess a vouch would be the other way. But I mean, in most cases, the buyer is going to want to pay goods and services. So I guess it's just like learning more about who's buying from you and figuring out who they are and if you can trust them. I can't think of anything else really.
Yeah. You got to be cautious with friends and family too, because you start doing too many transactions through that way of accepting money, and PayPal can start looking into it. I'm not exactly clear on what the policy is on friends and family, but I know that some people overuse it and it causes their account to come under scrutiny. So be judicious when using that payment method. And then, yeah, I agree. Like, maybe the best way to, David Riverfront says, chargebacks can happen as well on friends and family if a credit card is used. Yeah, and so let me take that opportunity to underscore like what Josh said, which is that if you transact with people that you trust and or that have a good reputation, that is perhaps the best seller protection one can have. So, transact with people who are respected, well reputed, if possible. I know that's not always possible, certainly, but try and make that the case, and that's maybe the best insurance policy you can have. So ask someone to facilitate a deal that helps for a big deal. Yeah, that's a good tip too. That's a good tip from Blinding 90s as well. Let's go. The Corona. Okay. Another question on this topic related. What other venues to buy and sell cards outside of eBay are trustworthy and cost effective? And that comes from Jaywood 1527. And like those two things are huge, right? Because like trustworthy, it's like we just got done talking about how like it almost no matter what the medium is that you do a deal through, if the people on either end of the deal have integrity, are reputable, good faith, long-term hobby people, very, very good likelihood that that deal is going to go smoothly, and there will be many future smooth deals. So like the deal is only as good as the two parties on either side of it. And then cost effective. So people get absolutely blitzed when they sell things on eBay. You have a 10% collectibles fee. You have a 4% PayPal fee if it's goods and services, which obviously it is through PayPal. And then you have taxes. So people get absolutely hammered on both sides of the transaction, and up to a fifth or more of deals is captured by somebody other than the buyer and the seller. So, do you have any venues that you want to recommend based on buying and selling cards outside of eBay that put you in touch with trustworthy hobbyists and that are cost effective?
Are you asking me today or next week?
That's a great answer.
The other one is MySlabs right now. Really good website. I've used it a few times. It takes quite a bit of time to get in as a seller, so it's a little bit frustrating. And then obviously like just doing it on your own on Instagram and like finding the community, getting in the community and knowing people and meeting people and figuring out who's buying and selling through that. But that's tough. Yeah, there isn't like a really good one yet. So, I mean, we're working on something, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, stay tuned. Yes, next week, Ryan Bitter, you heard that right, sir. This is one of the biggest issues that needs to be addressed in the hobby right now, is trying to solve the problem of transacting. And wouldn't it be great if there was a large pool of trusted hobbyists who all were assembled together under the same platform and who could transact with each other, knowing that it's very likely going to be a high quality hobbyist on the other end, and it's not going to cost you anything. I think that's kind of the dream scenario for doing deals in the hobby.
Yeah, we're close. We're really close.
Yes,
with Card Ladder.
Yes, we are. Very exciting. Okay. K Dizzle's cards, changing topics here. He writes in, great question here. I'd love to hear from the chat on this one too, as Josh and I make attempts at answering this question. K Dizzle's cards writes, coming into the hobby, how do you go about finding a mentor? and maybe I could embellish the question a little bit too before I direct it to you, Josh. Like, not only like how do you go about finding a mentor, but like how do you then like not become annoying to the mentor?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really, really good question and a great topic because I think it is. I mean, first of all, having a mentor is super important. And the question of like how to find one and how to not annoy them is kind of the tricky part. I myself have, I'd say like 2 to 3 mentors who kind of got me going when I first got started and still great friends with them today. So it's very critical. So let's see how to find one. I guess like you just want to like dive into the community, right? Start posting on Instagram, figuring out who has similar stuff than you that you have, and trying to like find common ground with somebody. So for example, like one of my mentors and friends at the beginning was Waldorf Stories Grant. Shout out to Grant. Uh, he'd been collecting for quite a bit of time before I joined. Maybe not too much longer, maybe like a couple of years, but we both had a shared love of 90s basketball cards. And so just kind of bouncing ideas off of him, trying to learn from him. I bought a card from him. I think that's really big. I think that got his attention, like me willing to just kind of pay full dollar what he was asking to buy a card and then asking him about it and getting excited over the purchase and the deal and then asking if I can help him find other cards. Got it started for me with him. And then guys like Justin, same kind of thing, like helping them find stuff they're looking for is really helpful. And then just sort of like picking their brains. And honestly, like the biggest thing is just becoming friends with them, you know? Like I wouldn't consider you, Chris, to be like a mentor, but I think our friendship in the hobby is just as important as a mentorship because having someone that you can just bounce ideas off of or, you know, hold each other accountable to something, I think is important. And then the mentor thing kind of just comes with like, if you find someone that knows more than you about a particular area and maybe you can help them with something else. So it's kind of like a give and take situation.
Totally. If anything, you have mentored me on a number of occasions. And especially when it came to me dipping my toe in modern, you know, and like it being a mentee in that situation, you know, it's okay to have a little opinion or something too. Like sometimes I would push back, you know, I'll be like, well, why is gold prism so iconic? Like, why don't I zag super hard and get a 1-of-1 from Leaf? And you'd be like, well, no, like here's why this matters to modern and stuff. So, you know, not taking advantage, but making things interesting for your mentor is good. You know, and knowing when you are the mentee, and when you are the mentor, and knowing to respect people's time and their opinions and stuff, and like if they are giving you valuable information, to respect it. Now, something that occurred to me as you were talking was like national and like in-person card gatherings versus connecting through social media and other online venues. Like, what's the difference there when trying to, you know, seek and acquire wisdom from experienced people in the hobby?
Yeah, it's big, man. Like in person in the hobby is really big because then you can kind of like put a face to the Instagram account and see if you actually like are friends with that person, if you get along with them. It's just a totally different dynamic. As far as like trying to get information off of them, I don't know. I feel like it's the same advice. I feel like just being friends with someone is the best way to do it. I don't really get a lot of scenarios where people just like come to me asking a bunch of questions. It's usually like I become friends with them over some shared interest, and then they sort of glean information off of me over time, and I usually get some benefit back. Yeah, I don't know that like in person is any different, to be honest. It's still like this. It's still like just like a friendship kind of thing.
Yeah, and you know, you're not going to click with everybody. You know,
Yeah,
like it just, there's some people in the hobby that I've clicked with really well, and then there's other people just not so much. It just, personality matters, you know, shared interest matters. But like, I love that thing you said about like, if you buy a card from somebody, it's a good way to get their attention. I think that's good advice.
I think the reason for that is like, if I have a card and I'm selling it, I own that card before I sold it, so I had some sort of like belief in the card, and I had some sort of like attachment to it. So like when someone buys it from me, I feel like they understand why I owned it before, and they want to buy it for maybe the same reason that I bought it. And so there's some like shared interest already right off the bat just from buying a card from them.
Definitely. That bleeds into the next question. This is from Mikey the Breaker. And Mikey, what's up, man? See you in the chat. He said, how do you find rare cards in the hobby? Just point blank. How do you find rare cards? Like, it seems like he goes on to say, it seems like there are just some cards that only the OG hobbyists ever get alerted to. So what do you think? How do you go about finding rare cards? Because you found quite a few. I remember there was a month or like a week where you landed like 3 grails in the same week. Including the penny PMG green, if I'm recalling correctly. It was just a flurry. So how do you do it? How do you go about finding the rare cards? Do you have to have a certain status to get access to these cards? How does it work?
Not really. Like most of the stuff that I find is just through my own search of finding stuff. There's obviously some stuff that I'm able to find faster, but just because of like my network or whatever. But most stuff is like the Topps Chrome Gold was just like me hunting the people down. And it's like the PMG green is just me pestering someone on Instagram for 2 years straight, and the gold Prism LeBron 2013 is just me pestering someone over and over. And Grant's in the chat; he can attest to like it's mostly just a matter of like persistence and trying to find stuff. The other good trick we have is like if you're on eBay and you see like a rare card pop up that maybe you haven't seen very often, you can just message that seller and be like, do you have anything else cool? And that works like 1 in every 50 times. But if you do that 50 times a day, you're gonna eventually uncover some stuff. There's not really a secret, to be honest. There's not like a secret network or like something like that. Like the stuff that I see on Instagram, you guys can see it too. So there's not like some secret network I'm tapped into or anything like that. It's mostly just persistence.
How does Rodman always follow the accounts with like from Asia with the big cards? Like anytime I find an account with Jordan Grails, Rodman PC has liked every single photo before I have.
Because he's on Instagram a lot.
I guess so. I mean, searching Instagram is really hard. So it makes it tricky in terms of like trying to find and locate stuff on Instagram. So hashtags can be helpful.
No, they can't, dude. Hashtags suck. The best way to do it actually is like, let's say you're looking for a specific card. Like if I was looking for, let me find something rare. If I was looking for this, I would go find some sort of post that's related to this. Like if someone had a Jordan of this and they posted it, and I would go through the comments on that post, and everyone that commented, I'd go through all their pages because those people have some sort of interest in this card or some sort of connection. And a lot of times someone will post and be like, oh, I have one of those too. So it kind of sends you down that rabbit hole of going to that person's page and then seeing who he follows. The hashtag search sucks, dude. It's a waste of time. Like just start like digging through posts and comments.
Yeah, no, that's really smart. That is a way to discover stuff for sure. It's just like look at people who have commented on something and just like dive into their page and see all the stuff that they've got. And look who's, before you like those old Wikipedia rabbit holes you could go down where you just start clicking around. Before you know it, you're like reading articles about black holes. Like,
yeah,
you can do that on Instagram too. You can really go down some black holes and find some stuff.
We're gonna have a new way to find rarest cards hopefully here in a week.
Yeah, we are.
Our search engine is gonna be a lot stronger than Instagram's for finding specific cards.
Yeah, it is, and it's the quality of the people who will have the opportunity to make cards available through that venue. I'm excited, scared even to see some of the cards that might come available. Nico Sports Card says, when you say be persistent when you find the gem, what do you mean? Like keep upping your offer? How do you get them to actually transact? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, upping the offer is one, but just sort of like, I wouldn't say like pestering them, but just sort of like always reminding them that you're there. Because a lot of times someone will say like, when I am ready to sell, I'll be sure and come back to you. That never happens. They always forget. So you just gotta like keep reminding them. And then every once in a while you'll catch them being like, you know what, I think I might actually sell. So I think it's just a matter of like checking up with them every once in a while and and trying to doing it at a rate at which is not annoying for that person. So, not every day, but like not more than like once a month or something.
Yeah, I'm mid pestering somebody on Facebook right now.
Yeah.
I try to space it out like 3 or 4 days, be very respectful, and just I'm not upping my offer. I mean, I might get so desperate that I do, but right now I'm just staying firm with the offer, but just sending that little reminder, please think of me. And it might be a little annoying to the seller, but like I've been in the other position as a seller when like I have a card, I don't want to sell it, but if and when the time does come that I do want to sell it, I'm not making spreadsheets of everybody who ever contacted me, with their email and their Instagram and how to contact them back. Like, so it is appreciated when people just remind you gently that they're there.
Yeah.
In case, it does actually come around time to let the card go.
A lot of times, like I'll eventually sell something, and then someone will reach out like a week later and be like, "What the hell, man? You told me that you were going to reach out." And I'm just, I didn't do it on purpose. Like you messaged me once, like 4 months ago.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I've had that happen as well, and I've been on the other side of it too. When like I respected their wishes very literally, and like put in my offer and then never said anything back after that, and then the card gets sold to somebody else, and I'm like, why didn't I just keep in touch?
Yeah. Use common sense and don't be a dick. I think is what it boils down to.
That's good general life advice.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay. JGP3 Cards writes in to say, very concise question. He says, is it a waste to buy base cards?
I mean, we're only laughing because of how much base cards have been sort of a topic of this show and how they've gone way up and then way back down. Are they a waste to buy? I mean, that's really totally a personal question, right? Like, do you collect? Depends on what you collect and all that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't say it's a waste. Like, there's a lot of cool base cards still out there, and I think like the hype of it and the craze sort of like turned us off just because of how much it was talked about, not necessarily the cards themselves. Like it was more about the attention it got and how annoying it was, versus like and some of the cards are boring, but like it's not like we just think they're all ugly cards. It's like so I wouldn't say it's a waste.
Yeah, I agree. Christina and I were at this shop, S&S Sports Cars in Amarillo, Texas, 2 days ago. And I always go to a shop and buy things. It's a problem, a habit. Also, it's a way to support the shop. And I bought some base cards. This was sitting there, Aaron Donald, Topps Chrome rookie card, and I just threw it in my pile of things I'm buying. It's a cool, clean looking base card. I am not an Aaron Donald collector by any stretch, but if you want like a card that kind of captures Donald and that means something to the hobby, like that, in this case it's a base card.
Yeah.
I got it. I'm going to grade it. I hope it tens, and then I'll probably sell it. And the thing about base cards too is that they provide an entry point. Thank you, Lefko. They provide an entry point for people to get involved with cards and get a feel of cards, wrap their head around cards without needing much hobby knowledge, without needing to go too far into the weeds, without needing to break the bank, usually. And, let me just say this in defense of base cards as well. Some of the most important cards in the hobby are base cards. Now, granted, that I'm talking vintage, I'm talking 86 Fleer, I'm talking 03 Chrome. Granted, these cards don't have 50 parallels and variations. So the base card meant a little something relative to the historical context that it came from. But
Right.
Some of the most important cards in the hobby have been base cards. There is a place for base cards, but we get nervous and we just don't really get, it starts to not make sense when base cards are suddenly, when statements are made like pop reports don't matter, and when people are presuming that just base cards are on these infinite trajectories upwards, when we know that supply and demand is not going to permit that. So when base cards get transformed into these like investment vehicles, and suddenly they're they're separated entirely from the thing that makes them cool and collectible, that's when we get nervous and we veer away from base cards. But base cards do have a place, I think. What do you think about that?
Yeah, totally. I think we were more annoyed at like the representation of what the base card became, which is like hype beast flippers coming in and just like using the base card to pump and dump. And that's exactly what happened. Like they got pumped up and then they started dumping and now the prices are going way down. So it gives us like a bad taste for base cards, but there's plenty of them out there that they can stand on their own as great cards. I mean, at this point, the 2018 Luka base card is like a pretty iconic card, right? It's like it's going to be standing on its own for a long time if he keeps up this play. And like the 96 Topps Chrome, Kobe, 86 Fleer Jordan, 61 Wilt. There's a lot of like important base cards, and so they have their place. And it's base, like the foundation. It's the base of the hobby, right? Like they're an important card.
They are, and certain, like, let me show a few more base cards I think are kind of cool. This is Curry's Upper Deck base card, BGS95. I picked this up at the LCS just because. Pretty low pop card. Another one is this is just straight from the Panini set, the 357 Curry, and a third Curry base card just to round out the trifecta. This is Studio 2009 Panini Studio. These are all base cards. They're relatively low pop and gem mint condition. I'm not a Curry super collector. You're never going to see me going for anything ridiculously huge with Curry. But, hey, I saw those cards in the shop. I saw the price sticker, and I bought them. What can I say? There is a place in my PC for base cards as well. Okay. All right, let's move on. Love this question, too, because it everything just – the cycles, I don't know, they just kill me. So JR Sports Card Chronicles says, what is the next Zag? Everyone wants to know now that prices have gone up everywhere. So how do you zag from the Zag? Is there a next Zag? Like, or or is the Zag the return to the Zig? What is going on? What's the next Zag?
Blew it. Next Zag is going back to the Zig, my friend. Honestly, like seriously, I've said this so many times. Like I said that when I zag away and I buy different stuff, and then everyone zags around, I'm just gonna go back to the Zig. Constant chase from the Zig to the Zag. That's why it's like a zigzag, right? Like you're never stuck on one. Just go back to the Zig.
Indeed.
I'll just play basketball again, honestly.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, zagging, I'm guilty of zagging too hard sometimes. We all can zag too hard from time to time. When everybody starts, it depends upon why people are zagging or why they're zigging. If the purpose of the zag is to just exploit a market inefficiency, then like the nature of this question itself suggests that like there's value in going back to the Zig now because so many people have zagged. Like, don't overthink it. Iconic cards have lost some value here. Like, the hobby and its cycles and the way that it works. I don't see any reason to think those are necessarily going to change. You go back to there's an opportunity to go back to the Zig, but yeah. It's so financially driven thinking that worries me, or that just like turns me off a little bit, because it's like that's not how I approach the hobby. I don't think it's necessarily the right way to think about the hobby. You do think about financial dimensions to things, but you also just got to think about bottom line, what's collectible. And like the thing that drove the Zag was like there are some super collectible rare cards out there that nobody's paying attention to. And if all of the Zig cards are like so expensive and so high priced and so cost prohibitive right now, then man, let me go and dabble into something really exciting and interesting, because there's got to be space in room to see value increases in that stuff. Well, now that stuff did increase in value, and now that stuff is on a lot more collectors' radars. So that kind of dilutes the attention on the Zig, the main cards, and like provides an opportunity to go back to some of those if you want to.
Yeah, another point I wanted to call out that Frankie 3500 touched on was like the main point of the Zag for me was to like get you to explore other lanes and other avenues, and then hopefully by that exploration and looking around, you might find some lane that you want to stay in. So like maybe you went to a zag and you're like you discovered something, like maybe it was football for me, or maybe it was soccer cards or tennis or whatever, boxing, who cares what it is. And you got into that zag because you just like you listened to us and you wanted to try something new, and then now you stay there because you found it. Like you're like, this is, I never would have found this if it wasn't for the zag, but now I actually think I'm best at this, or I'm better than at this than what I was doing before, and I'll stay here. And maybe you go and zag and you find out that what you like the most is what you started with and what everyone else is doing. So then you go back. You know, it's mostly like it's like going to college. You know, it's like going to college, learning some new things, something you've never seen before, meeting different people, and you kind of figure out what's going to be your major and what's going to be like your future. So I think that's another interesting way to think about it.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. And every time you zag, you, or at least me, I learn something new. I learn about cards. I learn like new ways to think about cards, like tying that into your university analogy. Like I love the zag. It teaches me something about cards and different collectors and different perspectives every time. And Lefko is wondering, so is this really going to come full circle, and you will zag so hard next week that you will be holding up 5 Trae Young cards, base cards?
Are his prices going down?
I don't know if they've gone down that much, because Trae Young collectors have an eye on Tyler Hero prices. And like when Hero prices go up, Trae seems to sort of follow suit sometimes.
Plus, Trae Young didn't have to play, so people can just keep speculating.
Right. The best thing to ever happen to a prospects market is when they never play a minute.
No, I won't be buying Trae Young.
All right. So Lamim James writes it. So let me transition to another topic here, more lighthearted topic. Lamim James says, Tyler Hero or Trae Young?
Oh my God. I think the better question is Tyler Hero or MPJ.
So somebody else wrote in with that question too.
Probably Trae Young.
Yeah.
He's just done it longer and been more consistent.
He has. He sure has. He's got 2 seasons of it under his belt now. Go ahead.
I was gonna say Hero and MPJ is a more interesting one. I don't know. I feel like Hero on the versus MPJ, but both of them I'm pretty like wait and see.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that either. There's always entry points to get it in with players. I mean, man, LeBron rookies. There's some amazing LeBron rookies that could have been had for a couple $100 last summer. Now, forget about it. But there's always chances to get involved with players. Don't let the FOMO consume you, lest you like Hero, man. He had a terrific game. But he's not going to be putting up 37 points every game when he's not even starting. And they again didn't start him tonight. And he had a relatively quieter game. Now that doesn't take away from what a terrific player he is and the potential that he has, not at all. But you're going to see fluctuations and stuff like that as players. Same thing for MPJ, as they're trying to figure out where they fit onto a team, and like they're still developing, they're still getting better. And the other thing too, it's a little tricky. It's like it is Hero's rookie year, but like Hero is coming off of a 4-month hiatus in between the end of the partial regular season and the resumption within the bubble. So like you're seeing second year Hero play right now, and it looks like he made a leap, and that's great. But that's something maybe to keep in mind too. And then with Trae, I mean, it will have been 10 months since he last played an NBA game when he gets to play another one in January when the league resumes, assuming that like the Delete 8 bubble doesn't happen. So
Right.
Some stray thoughts there on that question. There was a couple of Hero questions. Let me just get to one more of them. That actually Mike Pinkerton and Drake Sports Cards both kind of had the same question. Drake said, Tyler Hero, right now, is he a buy, a sell, or a hold? What do you think? I think I know what your answer is here.
So.
And indeed, whoever it was, so the Tyler Hero Nebula, Prism Nebula 1 of 1 is right now on eBay. Somebody sent it to a 10-day auction a day ago. The Heat did look inevitable at 3-1 as the Eastern Conference Finals, but like, okay, now it's 3-2, and the Celtics just had like a pretty impressive win. So that's a bit of a gamble, I think, sending that thing to a 10-day auction.
Yeah, I would have done a 3-day. But I mean, that card will get returned anyways, right? Like, one of the worst problems of eBay right now is that my suggestion is to sell Hero, but man, that's not even that great of a suggestion because people are just going to return the cards you sell.
It gets dicey when you got players whose values fluctuate like rapidly. Okay. Let's see here. All right. This question comes from Keating Cards. Keating Cards writes in, is the dam being created by the grading companies going to cause a flood once it opens up? We can assume there's a ton of basketball sitting idle waiting to be graded, which we also could assume will be on the market just in time for hype with the new season. Impact on the hobby. What do you think?
I don't know. I don't really like that analogy. It's not a dam. A dam implies things have stopped. They're still grading a ton.
Yeah, they are, and it's more of a slow trickle than a sudden bursting. Although I have
more cards get graded every quarter, so I don't.
Yep.
Like, it's just like, it's not a dam. It's just like a bigger river.
Yeah, for sure. And the other component to this question is like some of these, to go back to base cards for a second, some of these base cards from like 2012 Prism and stuff like that were being heavily marketed by the sellers as being low pop. And, the pops on those cards are starting to creep up a little bit. I saw a great collector post a picture the other day of, close to 50 2012 Kobe Prism base. Boom, there it is. Like, the pop is starting to creep up a little bit on this stuff because it's collectible and people want it and they want it graded, they want it in slabs. So, pop reports are going to come up a bit.
Yeah, I mean, once I realized the prices on the base 2012 Prisms were going up, I pulled 6 LeBrons out of my binder and graded 5 PSA 10s. So, like, I'm sure a bunch of people had the same thing. His pop's over 300 now on the base. I think it was like in the hundreds when I graded mine. So it's not like the pop's going to go from 300 to 500 in one day, like implying there's a dam. It's just like, it just keeps going up faster and faster.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And like as 90s collectors, or like with feet in the 90s collecting era, we often deal with cards where we kind of know what the grade distribution is going to be, and we have a pretty good idea of what the pop is. Now, pops do increase of 90s cards also, but it's different than when you're getting involved in sets that like just got hot and like that nobody cared to grade a year ago, and now all of a sudden there's a strong incentive to grade. I suppose that just sort of implies caution, and be discerning when you're looking at buying stuff like that, if you're going to be concerned that the value might go down when a bunch more of these cards get graded. This comes in from Kovalowski Tire. They say, I love the reverse card ladder feature to see who dipped. LeBron has had a few cards that dropped 50% or so in the last quarter. Should we look for value and hope for a finals win correction? Or is now the realistic price range? So there's a couple of different parts to that. The one thing is that like using the reverse ladder. And I know like when you added this feature, it blew up. And I had a lot of people very excited about using this feature. And I think they use it effectively. What do you think about the question here?
So I use that feature a ton. I was showing it to you earlier today, me using it just because like if there's like a player that I think they've dipped, I'll just like type in that player's name on the ladder reverse sort like monthly or weekly change and just figure out like what cards have dipped a lot. Like this one right here. It's going down. Look at that giant crash. Like when something crashes that fast, that usually means it's going to have a little bit of a correction going back the other way. So you could honestly just like look at this. It went way up here and then way back down. It's pretty safe to assume that like it'll creep up just a little bit off that big dip. So like you could just honestly just go buy a bunch of these, click buy it now on eBay, and just go try to find someone buy them. Um, what's the second question? Like they're basically asking like, is the stuff dipping gonna stay down or go back up?
Yeah.
I think it's a matter of like how fast did it dip? You know, stuff like when it dips that fast like that. It's the same as when all that base prism stuff went up really, really fast. It usually means that like it's not sustainable and it's gonna dip back down and sort of like regulate itself and like turn into a more of a logarithmic graph over time. Uh, so same for when it dips really hard. That it just like dipped too hard too fast. So like eventually there'll be a breaking point where people are like, all right, it shouldn't be this cheap. Like there is some evidence to support that it was once a lot higher than this. So like we got to stop this somewhere.
Yeah. That and like I think you can also segment it by like card as well. Like some cards are like very speculative nature cards. Like, hey, I'm gonna take a gamble on this player, this set, and hope that this set maybe blows up, and like maybe even a few people buy into it, but then like a retreat comes. And then there's other cards that are iconic and that matter and that are part of an important lineage of cards and sets and brands, and you know they're legacy cards. And like if those have a big dip, like I might have more confidence that that particular card or player or set is going to return. But you know, the thing is, I definitely have anecdotally observed that money right now has been to some extent diverted into ripping wax, which has a very gambling flavor to it. Bowman baseball, Bowman Chrome coming out, Mosaic no huddle football coming out, Mosaic hobby box football's coming, football boxes coming out. Money is being channeled into box breaks, into ripping, because like, man, we didn't have product for a while there, not at the same level we normally do. And so like I think maybe some of the more speculative money has gone away from more speculative singles and it's gone back into wax. And then we also know that people are gambling a lot too. So you know some of those speculative cards, those might be more of a correction, but the more iconic cards might be a dip that has another upswing coming up.
Yeah.
Some thoughts there.
Yeah, like Pascal Siakam dipping, for example, is like a dip I would expect because people are like, all right, he like didn't show up when he had it team to himself. There's not really much evidence to support him making a big return as like the star of that team. So people just like, that's not one I would jump on. But like, yeah, if like Kobe's Topps Chrome rookie took a huge crash, like, all right, that's one that's like I know eventually we'll get the attention back and I can buy that one.
Definitely. The Iron Sheik writes, and he says, discuss how sports card corrections will ultimately be good for the hobby.
It's going to be good because the price points of a lot of these cards are back to where people can jump in and affordably buy some cards again and get more people excited about it. Like, the part that sucked about the big rise was like the cards that new people would want to buy, like coming in new, like Luca's and stuff, were just so expensive that they couldn't, and it was frustrating. And we got a lot of questions about like, how do I buy something when everything's so dang expensive? And that's super frustrating, right? It's like you have to tell people to be patient. And now that the prices come back down, you know, we can maybe get some of those people back into the hobby and get like the overall hobby growth back to some exciting times of people being able to afford stuff and buy stuff and being able to like speculate and buy stuff and hopefully make some money off of it in a more organic, like slow growth. I think that's the best outcome.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Like I think you have the Lillard Prison Base 9.5 pulled up there, and like that, I mean, that aberration where just speculation and hype on the card just got out of control. Yeah, but it has returned to a much more normal rate of growth right now with many cards. If you just like erase the month of August, like
Yeah, look at this. Yeah.
yeah, if you just cover up that irrational, yeah, just cover it. There's actually a reasonable slope right there connecting the 2 points. That that's just like a more moderate, reasonable growth for a card, but you have to know to like exclude the crazy run up, right?
Luckily, we have logarithmic graphs, which help a little bit, but the logarithmic graphs aren't even helping enough because it was so much of a jump and fall.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing, dude, is like it's not even that like certain players are immune to it. A lot of us talked about like, well, if you just only buy like LeBron cards are dipping like crazy, and he's like coming up on the finals here. And Mahomes, you were telling me this morning, like the Mahomes.
Yeah, it's Prism Silver. His
Prism
rookie base
Silver.
is Prism TSA 10.
That one is coming back down to earth. It peaked at. I'll just use this great feature. It peaked at 8,500, and now it's at 50. So it came down about $3,000, and he's playing really well right now. So it has nothing to do with like Patrick Mahomes and his outlook for the future. It's really just about the card and like how many of them there are in the market and how easily it was to like manipulate it up and get it, and then now like come crashing back down. So the only thing that protects against this kind of stuff is rarity. So like the rare cards didn't see these great leaps in price and these great crashes because they just simply didn't sell. So we don't know what would have happened. Like we don't have this daily tracker on some of these rarer cards to see that they went crazy up and crazy down. So we just like sort of assume that they did like a steady growth like they always have because they just didn't sell. Like you're like, oh, get rid of August. Well, a lot of those cards never sold in August, so it's already done.
Yep, exactly. So like the Mahomes Kaboom 2018, the 2018 Mahomes Kaboom PSA 10 is a great example of this. But there's examples of this in Giannis's card catalog. The Giannis cards are still setting record highs, but it's the rare ones because they, like you said, like we don't know what those cards might have sold for had those cards.
Look at this.
Yeah,
you're totally right. Like the red line is the prism where like, oh, way up and then way back down. And the actual growth from point A to point B is the same curve, the same like trajectory, same ratio as the blue one. It's just that it took this crazy path to get there.
right. So like, so maybe an interesting perk of rare cards as well is that they sell so infrequently that the likelihood that you're going to buy at an irrational peak is much lower. Yeah. So, and I believe the Kaboom is like pop 30 or something.
It is. You're right on.
And what's amazing about that one too is that if you compare it against the Mahomes Prism PSA 9, you can see it actually overtake the Prism PSA 9 Mahomes.
Nice.
So I think there is a sort of people are definitely looking into cards, more rare stuff. There you go. The green line being the Mahomes PSA 9. People are looking at cards that are just a little more tougher to obtain, and they like them for a number of reasons. I mean, we talked about like the Kawhi National Treasures RPA 9.5 last week. That card just set an all-time high this week. It just set a new all-time high. Like as Kawhi's Prism base market absolutely collapsed. I mean, it's still a $2,000 card, but like from its peak. But like the 9.5 set a record high this week. So
if you're tracking like the Kaboom market and you're like, oh, I want to figure out the price of a rare one, like here's the LeBron, and you're like, okay, so here it looks like the LeBron would have been like here for the Mahomes, and you can just like project that up pretty much and be like, LeBron's probably
yep.
$4,000 or whatever. So this one right here has gone from, this is kind of the basis of our predicted value modeling, is that this one was at 1,200 and now it's at 3,000, so it's more than doubled. So this one's probably like 4,500 now for LeBron. It's pretty simple, right?
Yes.
Safe to assume like similar player, similar set, or same set, same grade, similar players to their like importance in the hobby to the sport. Pretty safe to assume this one's $4,500 now.
Yeah, indeed. That's what's nice about legacy sets too, is you have LeBron and Mahomes Kabooms, and they look similar, and they're collected by similar collectors, and you can learn a bit about these markets, and that information is transferable. That's a sweet card.
This is my You know how like someone will be like, "Look at the sale," and then like the next post in their thing is like, "Look at mine."
Yeah, right, exactly. I got one too, guys.
Just so you know, I also have. Those are my favorite. Or they're like, "Guys, check out the 6 sale." Here comes a story about you and your 10 copies.
Guys, am I a genius or what? Look at this pile.
Also, the fun part about the market correction, going back to that question, is that we're gonna see who's a player and who's not, who's gonna stick around, and who like made the smart decision during that, and who, because before we were talking about how everyone was flexing and flaunting all this stuff, and the reason they were doing that is because fucking everyone was making money and everyone was able to flaunt. But now that very few people can flaunt, we're gonna see, you know, who's here to stay and who's like actually making the good decisions going forward, because it's not going to be as easy and it's going to take more skill. So we're going to see less flexing and more people hiding the fact they lost money, and so it's going to be interesting.
Love that take. It reminds me of a take I saw on Twitter by Watch the Breaks like a few months ago over this last summer. And he said, yeah, man, everybody is a genius in a bull market, but
Yep.
who was succeeding in the hobby 4 years ago when it was much harder to pick winners? And same thing here. There's a couple of things like that you kind of mentioned. Like, number one, like who has strong hands? Who actually believes in the hobby and the players and the cards that they're collecting is going to take a more long-term approach? That's an interesting question. And then two, like who will figure out ways to navigate this new, hobby environment that we're in right now?
Yeah. You know how I know the hobby's going to be okay? Because like so many people that I know and in my network are like so happy the market's dipping because they want to buy more cards and which is just going to cause the prices to go back up.
Yeah, and then the prices will rest on the buying proclivities, the prices that like the collectors who really want these cards are willing to pay. That's
Yep.
that's the market fundamental that you want to see, not
And
speculative buys that are just not tied to anything rational.
And when I made that Instagram post about like, if you want to invest in something, buy things that are collected and buy cards that collectors want. And it's because of that point you just made. When like the prices go down and the people who stabilize things are the collectors, but they're stabilizing the cards that they want to collect, right? They're stabilizing and buying cards they've always wanted in their PC to collect. Like, we may not see a recovery on a lot of these base cards because they were never sought after by collectors. It was just a matter of the pump and dump, or like someone trying to hype a certain card, and it may not recover because collectors actually never did care about it.
Yeah, talk a little bit. You made another. Speaking of your story, you ran a poll that said, "Do you lean collector or investor?" And then you got results. You got like a ton of people responded, and you got results. Talk a little bit about the results and how you interpret those.
It was 65 collector, 35 investor, but I got about 20 DMs wishing that I could do a third option of both.
Yeah.
And so that's why the question was like, which way do you lean? Like I understood that like a lot of people were both, but if it's almost like if you had to pick one, I just kind of wanted to see what people would say. I think most people said collector just because like it's the more socially accepted answer. Like if like you're seen as a better person if you're a collector, like a better like moral person. So I understand what, um, but I still think that like in general, there's more collectors than investors. I like to think, especially now. So I think the data came to be true, but I would say it's probably not quite actually 65 to 35, just because of the social pressure to like be a collector.
Definitely. And there's like this like a paradox almost, which is that like I've come to believe in my years of experience that the most successful like long-term investment thinking in sports cards comes from thinking like a collector. So the two worlds like seem to overlap to me. There's a question that came in above. It said from Antron Wynn. He said, "Best content in the hobby. Thank you, sir. And he said, just curious, what risks or losses have you seen with rare cards? I'm
Yeah,
still thinking about that. Do you have anything to comment on that?
I do. Yeah, that's a good question. One of the risks of rare cards is that like it's so rare and there's no prices that the seller is just sort of making up a price and you just kind of go with it, and then like maybe one of those cards actually does come up for sale and it sells for like half of what you just paid because you only have there's only one option for you to get because it's so rare, so you just kind of paid because you weren't sure, and then the real comp comes out and it's way less and you're just like crap. That's happened to me before for sure. It's like I bought like a LeBron X Fractor a while back at like 4 grand, and then a similar copy sold a little bit after that for like 1,800, and I was like, holy crap, I just got destroyed. I had no idea. So it is risky, and it's kind of like you really got to do your homework on stuff like this, right? Of like a rare card where you can try to map out what you think it's worth based on relative to other things or multipliers, and like do your best because it is risky.
Yeah, man. And with rare cards, there can be a strong incentive to like overpay, like more than overpay a reasonable amount, because you just feel like you might never see it again, and that's a fine line to walk.
Yeah.
Very different, and so that happens from time to time with Jordan inserts too. Like if you were to go look at a Michael Jordan insert graph, I don't have one off the top of my head, but you will see like I think like Jordan Hot Shots BGS 9.5 is like one I think of. Like you will see a peak and retreat pattern happen throughout the history of this card. It will climb and climb, and then it will drop 25%, and then it will go up a little bit again, and then it will drop 25% again. Like rare cards will have, there's a risk of rare cards having volatility as well. I think like in order to be a rare card collector, you need to have pretty strong hands too, and you need to be willing to like have that card in your collection for a few years if you want to see an appreciation happen. And like but the flip side of that is like rare cards are definitely insulated from market downturns that can happen from a flood of supply or a sudden retreat in demand, which is like what we're seeing with base cards right now. But like, yeah, I think you definitely put your finger on one of the big risks of rare cards. I want to think more about the risks of rare cards also.
It's also like Blinding 90 said, there's the flip of that where it's like you can really capitalize on something like that because you have better knowledge of the rare card versus the seller. Like I think if you see like these big accounts of these people that are really successful, they usually have a lot more rare cards because they just have way more knowledge and experience on like what the true value of some of these rare cards is, and they're able to get it cheaper than the seller thinks it's worth because they just have more knowledge. And they're able to capitalize on a lot of that inefficiency in the market and gather up those rare cards at cheaper prices. And it's definitely not easy to do. It takes a lot of skill and knowledge.
It does. Lefko Cards wrote a little bit above a great question. I love this question. I think about this question all the time. He says, who are the names, and I'm assuming he means like the players, who are the players with the most collectors? I think about that question all the time. I try to look at who and what type of person, what type of buyer is collecting which players. Who are they collecting? Why are they collecting them? And like 3 really easy answers to that are Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James. And if you look on Facebook, if you just like, there is a LeBron James collector Facebook group that has well over 20,000 people in it. There are like scattered Michael Jordan Facebook buy, sell, trade collector groups. Tens of thousands of collectors populate these groups. And then if you go into these groups and you just see what they're talking about, you'll see threads with dozens and dozens and dozens of replies analyzing and sharing and talking about like an obscure insert from a limited release set. And like, okay, these are players who are heavily collected. Those are 3. Yeah, go ahead.
We have like 1 minute. Sorry to cut you off. We have 1 minute. But
thank you.
Another quick cheat code, and I got this one from you actually. The best way to tell, in my experience, is go on a PWCC auction while it's running and search the player. And the player with the most listings is the most popular. Like if you search Michael Jordan on PWCC's current auction, there's like 15 pages. If you search LeBron, there's like 9 pages. If you search Mahomes, there's like 3, and it sort of like exponentially tapers down. Kobe probably has like 9 or 10 pages. A lot of that has to do with like how old the player is and how many cards they have, but in general, it's like a really good sense of how many people collect that guy. It's how many sales there are, how many cards are being brought to the market of them. I think that's a really good indicator. And if like, people are super hyped about some random player like Tyler Hero today. If you go to PWCC auction, there's probably like 6 Tyler Hero cards in the PWCC auction. So he's not like a highly collected player yet. We have 15 seconds. So I'll see you guys for the next hour. I'll go get a beer. We'll reconvene and get it going again. Hopefully that last tidbit was a nice little bonus for everybody. See you, Chris. And see you in a minute.
Good stuff.
The future is here. An innovation that will change the way the industry works. A Hot 100 chart, updated daily. The most accurate price guide on the market. Every card has its own profile with a wealth of information. Know the precise, real-time value of any card in the system. On demand. You now have the power to unlock the secrets of the hobby.